most concerns me is they do not recognize the systemic benefits of fluoride in the toothpaste. That the fluoride is incorporated into the entire tooth structure, and so it's not just a topical application. And we see that, and I can, vouch for that in clinical practice. When you get exposed root surfaces and more prone to decay, and you will see a slower rate of decay on the root surface in individuals that have consumed fluoridated water throughout their lifespan versus those who go with it as the gum tissue recedes. And it's troubling that they don't recognize that fluoride ion is incorporated into the entire toothbrush.
Dr. George, anything? And I'm sorry, I'm picking up feedback. I know it's not my phone because I've turned it off of the mode. So folks that have cell phones near a microphone, you could adjust that. Dr. George, anything else?
I think, to reiterate, we need to approach any issue where we put a substance in our bodies. We need to approach it from a true scientific approach with well-designed, well-controlled, peer-reviewed studies that show the benefits outweigh the risks. That's the only thing that I would want them to recognize.
Thank you very much. 2 minutes for fluoride-free Austin. Same question. The most critical points of the other side, understand.
Yeah, I just wanted to address a couple of points on the scientific studies, because I've looked at them as well. I'm a dentist, 18 years in practice, and all of the studies have one major flaw that they never really talk about, and that is you can't account for all the citizens who are relocating between non-fluoridated and fluoridated. They don't talk about home care. They don't talk about diet. It's always based on this is fluoridated and this is not. And the results that they always get are so close that it's really insignificant as far as what's better, being fluoridated or not. Beyond that, John Featherstone in 2000 in the JADA mag, which is the one that all the dentists read, showed that there was virtually no effect systemically that was beneficial to the teeth at all. It was all topical. I thought that was the end of fluoridation because this was in our magazine. It was boldly stated, no effect systemically. We know it incorporates in the tooth. The problem is that how it incorporates is it makes the tooth more brittle. It changes the collagen makeup of it. And that's the issue. If you want to apply it topically to get some kind of anti-carcinogenic effect, go for it. But to think that if you swallow it, it's going to be beneficial to your teeth is not true. And we've now shown this in hundreds of studies, correct? So, I think it needs to be made up. And on the Grand Rapids thing, because that was the first big test, it was between Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was fluoridated, and Muskegon, which was non. They started this study. After a couple of years, they were excited about the results, and they just ended it. This is in the Freedom of Information Act. They never even finished the study. The bandwagon had already started rolling. It was exciting, and they just went with it. So that study was never even completed. So I don't even like to quote that one, because I think that's where things went awry early on.
As far as talking about true science, I absolutely agree with you. I'm a scientist, but listening to the presentation from the other side, we heard about endorsements, and we heard a lot about anecdotal evidence. Neither is scientific. We were told about thousands of studies.
Excuse me, sir. Please complete your thought. The time has expired. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was trying to signal to you. We had 2 minutes aside on the question. Let me just interject here for a moment and ask: is JADA the Journal of the American Dental Association? There are people on.
What I was going to ask about was comparing the two levels, and I was, that's the one. So, I mean, again, the point being that 2.5 to 4.5, that's toxic levels by anybody's stretch of the imagination, right?
No, that's where the margin of safety comes in. And also, please note that Zhang said that the threshold at which this effect was observed was 1.9 parts per million, which is uncomfortably close. Normally, when you find a toxic effect, this is a small study group of 512 children. When you try and find a toxic effect in a small study group, your job is to determine what is safe for the whole population. And that's the whole population of the United States. Is a lot of people. And this 500 children was fairly homogeneous. They were all Chinese. They all had the same nutrition, essentially. Basically, very, very homogeneous. But we have, when we're protecting the whole population, we have to take into account the different ethnic groups in the country, different nutritional status, different health status. There's so many things. So normally, the routine is to assume that you need a safety factor of 10, that's called intraspecies variation, to take into account the whole range of sensitivity in the human population. And as such, 1.9 parts per million offers no protection to the children, all the children drinking fluoridated water in Austin.
And what is the, so our fluoride threshold is what?
What's our level here in Austin?
Our goal is 0.7 parts per million. Oh, sorry, I'm Jane Barazer, Assistant Director with Austin Water. Our, the EPA standard is 4 parts per million. They have a secondary standard of 2 parts per million, but our goal and our range in Austin is 0.7 parts per million.
But that, if I may, Madam Chairman, point out, this brings me back to the first question. You can control the concentration, but you can't control the dose. So a child, for example, drinking 2 liters of water at 1 part per million is going to get more fluoride than a child drinking 1 liter at 1.9 parts per million. So you need a really strong safety factor when you can't control how much water kids are drinking and how much fluoride they're getting from other sources. That's the fatal flaw of fluoridation, the fatal flaw of using the public water supply to deliver medicine. You can't control the dose.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to apply the same, you know, because you were talking about the naturally occurring in Fort Stockton, which, by the way, I've spent a fair amount of time in Fort Stockton. I actually like Fort Stockton and love West Texas. But does that mean that, so there's no additional fluoridation to the water because it's in such high natural occurring levels?
Yes, that is correct.
Just leave it green and then it'll...
Just leave it green.
If you leave it green...
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I thought I had to hold it down.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just... Yes, the water that we use comes from an aquifer. The city's water source is well water. And for years, we used the well water straight out of the aquifer. It wasn't diluted or changed in any way. It was very high in other minerals, especially magnesium. You know, if you're not used to it, you got to be careful drinking it, or you'll end up staying in the bathroom for a period of time.
High concentration of magnesium salts, like milk of magnesia, has high concentration of magnesium salts.
Right, but to address, what happened was they built a prison out there, and when they tested the water was good enough for us, but it wasn't good enough for the prisoners. It was too hard. So they built a reverse osmosis plant, and they mixed 50% of that reverse osmosis water with the natural groundwater, which reduced the fluoride level to 0.9 parts per million. We get the yearly water quality reports that every community gets, and I've never seen it below 0.9 parts per million.
And so, just as a follow-up, this idea of controlling the concentration versus the dose. I mean, where is the point where a dose is too damaging? And I realize it's different for different kinds of people depending on their condition, but I mean, how? When you extrapolate, the average person maybe drinking 8 glasses of water. Can you speak to that concept of?
Well, I suspect the average person doesn't drink 8 glasses of water. If they did, they would spend a great deal of time in the bathroom. Oh, that's
but I mean, typically I hear that from doctors. In fact, that was a question that we had in an earlier conversation was,
the average person probably doesn't drink 8 glasses.
But it is your recommendation to, I mean, by a lot of people that you get 8 glasses of water a day, and I realize that maybe not everybody does that. I know there's lots of recommendations not everybody follows, but that was actually a question I had earlier when we were looking at why the concentration was recommended to be lowered earlier in the year, was because we assumed that in part people were drinking more water because it's been part of what's been encouraged by doctors over the years, that we drink more water, and so. But I don't really have a sense for, I understand the concept of concentration versus dose, but I don't really understand how is there any kind of correlation for, yeah, please.
Just use a round number. 1 milligram per liter, or 1 part per million, means that if you consume 1 liter of water, you're consuming 1 milligram of fluoride ion. The toxic dose is 10 milligrams. I mean, that's lethal, okay? When I say toxic, I guess it depends on who you talk to. So, if you drink 10 liters of water, you know,
I didn't know that.
that kind of gives you an idea.
Right. And I do recognize that some people have different issues. I mean, you know, that I was really, you know, so the average person is not going to.
I misused the word toxic in their definition. I'm talking about
Okay.
could cause.
So okay. So and then I'll let Mike ask his questions. But the other question that I had was really this idea of the entire tooth versus the topical that you raised, and I wanted to hear what the other side had to speak to that.
Well, first of all, 8 glasses of water is 2 liters, and some people definitely drink more than 2 liters of water a day. In fact, as you said, the Institute of Medicine actually recommends 3 liters of water a day. People working outside in a hot climate drink a lot of water. I was in Western Australia, and the miners there were drinking 10 to 12 liters of water a day, working outside in a hot climate. So again, you can't control the dose. And talking about average people is not the point. If you put a toxic substance into drinking water, you have to protect everyone. This is your practice, and you've got to assure the public that everyone is protected. You can't go around saying, well, this is fine, this is a wonderful practice, but only drink 2 liters of water, or don't drink more than 2 liters of water. It's utterly preposterous. Again, you can't control the dose. You can control the concentration, but that's not the relevant thing. And as far as toxic doses are concerned, it's well lower than 10 milligrams. We have studies from China which indicate an increase in hip fractures at about 6 milligrams per day. And it's not just the dose that causes harm on the day. You're getting this for a lifetime. You're doing this every day. And 50% of that fluoride is accumulating in your bones over a lifetime. So what is it doing to your bones over a lifetime? Increasing hip fractures, increasing the incidence of arthritis, we believe, although the US has not done it.
But the question is about the topical versus the whole.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was just responding to their answers,
Okay, I'm sorry.
because I think we're going to have equal time on the responses.
Okay.
You are.
Yeah. So you want to comment on the topic?
Can you ask your question again on topical, because I got involved in his answer.
Yeah, me too. And but the question was just, you know, you're talking about it's the topical, and the other side is saying it's more, you need to look at the whole tooth structure and not just the topical. And
I don't believe there's a single clinical trial, randomized, true trial, that proves that drinking fluoride benefits the teeth. It's not been done. There's plenty of studies out there that will show, well, look, this community fluoride and this one's not, better decay rates. That's not shown as the science.
Now, they've never done a randomized clinical trial. You're absolutely right. And the study done by Warren from Iowa, which is a US government-funded study, they did something unusual. Instead of comparing communities drinking different levels of fluoride in the water, they actually calculated how much fluoride the children were ingesting. And when they found that, they found there was no relationship with tooth decay and the amount of fluoride that was ingested in the groups of children. And incidentally, when we come to tooth studies, all the studies I cited have been coming from pro-fluoridation researchers and pro-fluoridation agencies. I haven't cited a single study here on tooth decay from opponents of water fluoridation. Their own studies indicate that it just simply doesn't work.
We'll come back and see the other one.